let's talk about butter. I know we've all become a little butter obsessed, maybe even put butter in our coffee, but I'm going to show you in this video that there's actually 3 better foods you could be eating if you're trying to lose weight other than butter. Yeah. And some people I know are eating butter to lose weight. So let's debunk this myth about butter and weight loss. And let me show you 3 different foods I want you to lean into that are better than butter that will support your weight loss journey. Let's dive in. First thing I think we got to ask ourselves is where along the nutritional line did we decide that butter was a great tool for weight loss? And I think it really started back in the Atkins days. You remember the Atkins diet where everybody was eating a ton of fat and they were eating all kinds of fat, good fat and bad fat. There was meat and fat. But then we started to realize, wait a second, there's a difference between good fat and bad fat. And so we evolved into the ketogenic movement where all of a sudden we said carbs are bad, but fat is good. Good fat is good. So we all moved away from refined carbohydrate. We started to eat more of nature's carbs, and we started to really think we had to bring our fat levels up so that we could move into ketosis. And so that's where grass-fed butter started to really make a comeback or had its debut. And then out of the keto movement, we started putting butter in our coffee because we were looking at butter as a tool to kill our hunger in the morning so that we could be into these longer fasted states. So all of those kind of got us to this place of understanding that fat might actually help us, not hurt us. But I want to evolve this to a new place because we are trying to metabolically switch for weight loss. That's what we're trying to do. So if you're trying to get into the fat burning state and burn fat for energy through fasting, there are 3 foods you want to bring in before you go into your fasted state that will help you burn more fat in these states. So here we go. Here's the first one, is that you want to focus on protein. Can you bring your protein level up? I feel like protein is the new butter for weight loss. Really, I want you to think about this for a moment. When we bring protein up, we stimulate something called mTOR. And mTOR is where we start to see growth of muscles. So you'll start to see that your muscles will get stronger. When your muscles get stronger, you create more insulin receptor sites. When you have more insulin receptor sites, there's more doors for your body to push glucose into muscles. When your body's pushing glucose into muscles, now that muscle can be used for energy, like when you're working out, and not stored as fat. When you have less muscle, you have less insulin receptor site. When there are less insulin receptor sites, there's not as many openings for glucose to get pushed in, and that glucose will be stored as fat. I want to rebrand fat. Fat is just excess. Your body put excess glucose, it put excess hormones, excess toxins. So let's create more muscle so it can put the glucose into the muscle to be used for our benefit. So 1 gram of protein for every pound of body weight you want to be. I really encourage you to do protein cycling, where every couple hours you're doing another 30 grams of protein so you can trigger amino acid receptor sites. If that's brand new, I've done a ton of videos. I'm sure my team will link some videos in here for you to lean into to understand protein cycling. But the protein is the new butter for weight loss. It is really, really powerful. So that's your first one. The second one is I want you to look at other good fats, specifically MCT oil. So think of this metabolic switch as needing some lubrication. So sometimes we need to lean into other fats, and MCT oil is the one that switches you over the best. This is why MCT oil in your coffee in the morning can actually help you elongate your fasting window, putting you in this fasted state where you're burning fat for a longer period of time. So what MCT oil will do in your coffee as you switch over is it makes it easier to switch, and all of a sudden now MCT oil helps you create ketones, and those ketones will go up into the brain and kill your hunger hormone. So when we're looking at fat loss, we're also looking at how do we make sure you're not hungry in your fasted state. So you can really help minimize the hunger in that fasted state by adding MCT oil in, specifically in your coffee in the morning. Okay, my last food group, really, and something I really encourage you to add in your sugar burner state. When you are are eating, and that is fiber. So I want you to think of fiber as brakes on your blood sugar. So when I'll give you an example of something that I love to break my fast with. Usually around noon, I will make a big green salad. And I'll put a ton of greens in there so that I can make sure that my microbiome is well fed while I put a ton of protein on that. That's a pretty common first meal that I'll have. But what fiber is doing is it's feeding the bacteria that balance your blood sugar. So when you add in that extra fiber and that blood sugar is more balanced, what ends up happening is that you're going to switch over into the fat burning state faster. The second part about fiber that's so important is that it feeds a set of bacteria that break estrogen down. And so when we add in more fiber, what happens is we feed the bacteria that break that estrogen down. If you don't feed those bacteria and estrogen doesn't get broken down, it will get stored as fat. So, we gotta think about food as this incredible weight loss tool in this really, it's like a chemistry experiment that we're talking about here. Feeding that microbiome so it can break down estrogen. We're looking at protein to open up insulin receptor sites so that we can drive glucose into your muscles, not into fat, and we're lubricating the metabolic switch using these good oils. There is a science to weight loss. So if you've never heard that before, 2 things. Don't give up on yourself. Try these 3 things, spread the word so we can make weight loss effortless for people. And let's start all embracing this idea of metabolic switching as the weight loss tool. And if you can learn how to work with your body so it doesn't have to store that excess in fat, you will find that you can effortlessly lose weight and you can eat a lot of food. It's not about deprivation. It's about tapping into the science of your body. So let's talk about foods you can eat to help your belly fat. And I know belly fat's like the favorite thing everybody wants to talk about here on this channel. So I'm coming at it from as many angles as I can to give you as many tools, because a lot of you are going to look at some of the other videos that I did on belly fat and you're going to be like, oh my God, those worked for me. Some of you are gonna be like, those didn't work for me. And then some of you are gonna come to a video like this and you're gonna be like, this was the trick. So what I'm trying to do is give you lots of different ways to approach something that's not only really annoying, this growing of belly fat, but as it has been well stated that belly fat is actually an indicator of what chronic diseases are building inside your body. So being able to handle the belly fat is really important. So let's talk about foods and what we can lean in to eat to help the belly fat. You ready? Got it? Here we go. So the first thing, for those of you who maybe are not familiar with my teachings, let me tell you what belly fat is. We look at fat and we tend to think that all fat is equal, but it's not. All fat throughout our bodies, what it is your body needed a place to store excess. And sometimes it stores excess glucose because it doesn't know what to do with it. You're insulin resistant. Sometimes it stores excess toxins because the liver is working really hard to break these toxins down. It doesn't really understand how to efficiently do it, so it stores it in fat. Sometimes you're storing excess cortisol because your life is really stressful and you're making cortisol all the time, so your body put it in your belly. And sometimes it's storing extra estrogen, especially those of you that are on any kind of estrogen patches or bioidenticals, or any of you going through the perimenopausal experience where you're really having these big swings in estrogen. So we have to look at the storage of fat and especially belly fat much differently. We can't just put it into one category. So with that in mind, belly fat is mostly cortisol and it's mostly estrogen. This is the place that your body's going to store those 2 extra hormones. So with cortisol, that's a whole nother video on how do you work with your mind and your stress levels to help belly fat. That might actually be a good one to do. I don't think I've done that video yet. But for estrogen, I really want to approach 3 different food groups and how we can look at this to be able to get your body to get rid of this estrogen so it doesn't store it around the belly. So here we go. First is the first food to lean into is fatty fish. Now, I've been doing more and more on the power of fatty fish, And to me, fatty fish is everything from salmon to anchovies to mackerels. When you're going in, by the way, to do some of the more of the fattier fish, especially like the mackerels and the sardines that have a tendency to accumulate some of the toxins in our ocean, it's really good to get the baby ones because they haven't been in the ocean as long. This is a really great one put out by Patagonia that is actually has a lower level of mercury. So you start reading the ingredients and you'd be interested to see that when you get a baby version of these fatty fish, they tend to have less toxins in them. Same thing with salmon is you really want to increase your fatty acid that have the most amount of omega-3 fatty acids in it. And if you're going, and I'll explain why here in a second, when you're looking at increasing fatty acids, we need to have that salmon be from the wild, not farm raised. So again, the nuance matters when we're trying to use tools like fatty fish to be able to help with belly fat. Now, couple things that I want to say about omega-3s and fatty fish and why they work so well. So they're high in omega-3s. And there was a really interesting study that I want to quote and I want to quote it accurately because I think it'll help you grasp the importance of adding something in for this belly fat. So this was a 2022 study, and what they did is the researchers split groups into overweight people into two groups. And one group, they fed them the same diet, by the way, but one group got the omega-3 rich fish oil every single day. So they didn't do the fish, but they did fish oil, and they got it every single day for 12 weeks. And what they found was the group that had the added in fish oil had a greater loss of fat specifically around their belly weight. They also noticed improvement in cognitive function for that group. So the reason I want to point this out, because I think this is really interesting, is that you don't necessarily have to have fish every day. You could have fish oil. I will put links to my favorites here in the notes. But when we add in omega-3s, we're not only supporting better brain health, but we are helping with the breakdown of estrogen to be able to move estrogen out of the system so it doesn't turn into that belly fat. So it's like a chemistry. Think of your body like a chemistry experiment, and you're adding in the omega-3s to be able to balance estrogen better so that you can be able to get that estrogen out of your system, not stored around your belly. Okay. Number 2, speaking of estrogen, number 2 is soy. So I'm on a mission to bring soy back because we have all the tools for menopausal women have become more narrow and more narrow. And when we go through perimenopause and menopause, it's really important that we have more food tools to be able to help the ever-changing symptoms that are coming and going. And one of the symptoms of menopause is belly weight. So what's interesting is that when we look at soy, it's a phytoestrogen. So what does that mean? A phytoestrogen means that it acts like an estrogen, it just came from plants. So a couple interesting studies, and there were actually several of them that I'll link here in the notes, but I want to just spit them out because it's really important. That soy is rich in the phytoestrogen called isoflavonoids. And these will actually mimic your body's natural estrogen, not in a bad way, in a good way, and will bring up your natural estrogen levels. Now, remember, when you go through menopause, if your estrogen levels go down, you become more insulin resistant. So the reason that soy as a phytoestrogen works so well is because it can help bring up your estrogen levels so you don't hit that insulin resistant place. But several studies went on to show that by increasing estrogen, you decrease belly fat. By eating more soy isoflavonoids, you increase estrogen. More phytoestrogens reduce menopausal symptoms, and that soy isoflavonoids speed up metabolism. So these were all studies that were done. I will link them in there for those of you that are science hounds so you can see. But soy has a multi-pronged approach that can be really beneficial, especially to my perimenopause and menopausal friends. Now, how should you eat soy? So for me, I love edamame. So you want to make sure it's always organic. So as much edamame as you possibly can eat would be fine. You put a little salt on this sucker, I'm pretty happy. Other forms of soy is tofu. Big fan of tofu because of the high protein amount, which go watch the videos I've done on how protein can speed up weight loss. Tempeh is a great form of soy. Miso is a miso soup is great for soy. What I'm not a fan of is soy milk, just so we're clear, because soy milk tends to be so highly processed that it spikes your glucose. So that would be the one soy that I typically shy away from. But number 2 is let's add more soy back in. Okay, number 3 thing you can do for belly fat, and I've been talking about this a lot on this channel, which is increase your green veggies. Now, green veggies do a couple things. I'm going to share with you what is like my tried and true, what I love about green vegetables, and then I want to share some science with you that's really interesting. So think of these green vegetables as fuel for the microbes in your gut that break down estrogen. We call this the estrobolome. There are literally bacteria in your gut that break down estrogen, and they need food. And what they want you to feed them is green leafy vegetables. So when you eat more green leafy vegetables from a variety of sources, what you're doing is you're feeding these microbes that will break estrogen down. What's interesting is if you don't break estrogen down, you store estrogen. So this goes for the menstruating woman. This goes for the menopausal woman. This even goes for the man who's got the pot belly and a little bit of the man boobs and has been exposed to a lot of estrogen mimickers in his environment, and the body stored it there. So one of the best doors out of all the storage of estrogen are green leafy vegetables. Now, a couple interesting studies that I found was that by increasing, this one was a pretty good sized study. It had over 1,100 people, and they found that increasing fiber intake, so this would be fiber intake, decreased your belly fat by nearly 4% of overall body weight over 5 years. Okay, so for context, just to give you an idea, this would be if you weighed 150 pounds, that's 6 pounds of belly fat that you can lose over a 5-year period. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're like, 5 years? What? Like, that seems forever. But when we look at the trends that happen to most people, each year they're gaining a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. So one of the things I love about fiber is not only is it feeding this microbes, but it helps to regulate your blood sugar. So just by having a salad with every meal, you're lowering the influx of glucose, which lowers the amount of insulin your pancreas has to make. You're feeding your microbes that are going to be able to get rid of estrogen. And if you do that repetitively over time, you will see a reduction in belly fat. I think it's a brilliant way to approach something that's very annoying. A couple of my favorite types of greens. I like all different kinds, but I love bok choy, I love chard, I love Brussels sprouts, I love dandelion greens. They're great for liver support. I love parsley. I'm trying to think. Mint. I put a lot of mint in my salad. Any green leafy vegetable I can get my hands on. Myself personally, I don't love spinach. It's just me. But if you love spinach, you can keep eating it. I would say something like an iceberg head lettuce isn't going to have as much of that fiber in it, and it's not going to be as nutritious as some of the ones I've mentioned here. Now, you can look at green juices. So green juices are interesting because they don't have as much fiber. It's just the nutrients that have been pulled out. But if you're looking, like me, constantly to be adding more green leafy vegetables in, sometimes juices can be good. You just want to make sure that you're not adding in the green juice with like a whole apple or pineapple, which is a very, very common way to drink green juice because it doesn't taste so good. So being able to drink the juice that doesn't have the apple can be supportive of the microbiome, can give you the nutrients you need, doesn't have as much fiber, but can also support that long vision that I'm talking about here for losing menopausal belly weight. So I hope that helps. I really am trying to make this simple for you. I know many of you that are losing weight using the principles of metabolic switching that I'm teaching here. You lose it when you go into the fasting window, but I want to make sure that we're having deeper conversations about the eating window and what we can do to lose weight with the foods that we choose to eat in there. And when it comes to belly fat, we have to bring back the fatty fish, the soy, and the green leafy vegetables. They absolutely are the hero and the antidote to that extra weight you're carrying around your midsection. Okay, have you been watching my videos and you're like, I don't know how to put this stuff all together? You might need my fasting lifestyle free course. I'll teach you exactly how to do it. Just click on the link above. It'll take it to you and it's absolutely free. My gift to you. On this video, I want to talk about 3 spices that will lower inflammation. And it's funny because spices for centuries has been this healing tool, but yet in modern day, sometimes we forget about the healing power of spice. And often we either don't put a spice into our cooking or we look at it only from a taste profile. So I really want to bring back the conversation of food as medicine in celebration of Eat Like a Girl coming out. If you can really see your eating window as adding these foods in that heal you, food becomes medicine, and then fasting becomes a way of tapping in to your own healing capabilities. And you combine those and boom, you've got a body that you will absolutely love. So we can't leave spices out of the food as medicine conversation. And these 3 are specific for lowering inflammation. So let's dive into what these 3 are. So the first one, you probably already are like, I would think you're probably thinking this one, but I really want to talk about the use of it, how we cook with it, and why it's the hero spice. It's turmeric. Most people now know that turmeric has an anti-inflammatory effect because it's high in antioxidants. And I want to talk about what antioxidants are. So let's go back to cellular health here. We have 72 trillion some cells in our body. And when we are exposed to toxins and stress, all of a sudden those oxidants, you get this oxidative stress that occurs inside the cell. And when there's oxidative stress inside the cell, what happens is toxins stay in there and trigger genes. So they can trigger any kind of gene. They can trigger genes for autoimmunity, cancer, chronic disease. They also shut down production of ATP from the mitochondria. And this is important because the mitochondria is trying to spit out all this ATP to give you energy to function and energy to heal. And if you get a lot of toxins that create this oxidative stress within the cell, now your energy goes down. So we have possibility of genes being triggered, energy going down, and then of course other cellular parts. There's a lot of different pieces of the cell start to malfunction. And overall, the cell, because it's traumatized from these oxidative stress, becomes inflamed. And then you start getting signs of chronic inflammation. So you see how those all work together? So when we add in antioxidants, it cleans up that oxidative stress, gets the mitochondria making more ATP, you will start avoiding triggering these genes, and you start to bring inflammation down. So when we look at the cell through the lens of turmeric, turmeric specifically works on arthritis, so it works on joints and it works on gut. So the research that I found that's really interesting is that, and this was actually a 2020 review, showed that turmeric, which the antioxidant component of turmeric is called curcumin, and that curcumin has an extraordinary antioxidant activity that can protect the cells from inflammation and accelerated aging. Again, specifically, we're seeing this in the gut and in the joints. So we want to make sure that we are having daily, is the way I would look at it, a daily dose of turmeric. But here's what's interesting about turmeric, and I hope some of you I know have heard this, is that you want to pair it with black pepper, because curcumin, when paired with black pepper, you see an increase, a 2,000% increase in its anti-inflammatory effect. So, that's as simple as using your turmeric spice and just when you're cooking, putting it together with black pepper. There are supplements out there that know this, but what I'm here to teach you is how to use food as medicine. And how to never buy a supplement again. So if you really get into the science behind spices, you realize that there's some serious power here, especially when we combine those two together. Okay, second spice, which is another favorite of mine, is ginger. Now, ginger, really fun, interesting recipe I have for you all is in Eat Like a Girl. I have a series of fasted snack recipes that you can actually eat or drink in your fasting window. Chef Leslie created them. She was my plant-based chef for that book. The interesting thing is that ginger, she made a really good ginger drink that is incredible that you can use in your fasting window. And a lot of you start to get nauseous within your fasting windows, primarily because fasting kills off the bad bacteria. And so what we know is when you go into longer fasts, when you go into 24-hour fasts and maybe even a 3-day water fast, if you can be drinking some ginger, you actually can help heal your gut and protect it from all the die-off of the bad bacteria. Now, the study that I saw and found showed that the antioxidants, again, now you know what an antioxidant is, the antioxidants that ginger have not only help the gut, repair the inflammation in the gut, but can help skin and brain. So remember, turmeric mixed with black pepper, the component is curcumin, is helping with joints and with IBS, like with the gut. Now we've got ginger, and it's helping with the gut, skin, and brain. So it's bringing down the inflammation in all these areas because these foods have different antioxidant loads. I used to say to my patients all the time, eat the rainbow, like look at the different colors, because like peppers, for example, when I look at peppers, my favorite is red, but I make sure I do yellow and orange because the color tells you that there's different antioxidant properties in there. So with ginger, what's fascinating is this one, for all of you trying to lose weight, there was a study that I will link in here that they did on 473 people. And they found that people who ate ginger lost significantly more body fat compared to the control groups that didn't. Now, the next question is, well, why did that work? Because it brought down metabolic inflammation. So when we start to bring ginger back into our diet, not only are we healing our stomach and giving the gut bacteria and the inner lining of the gut some really healthy antioxidant nutrients, but every cell in your body is getting that metabolic inflammation is coming down, and it's moving you out of insulin resistance. And insulin can do its job by getting glucose into the cell. So I hope you followed that. I mean, this is why I think we have a cultural issue where we think food is like, it's not that powerful. It is that powerful. Go listen to the episode that I did with Dr. William Lee. I mean, what he did, this is in my Resetter podcast, it's here on my YouTube channel. What he did that was so fascinating, he looked at the principles of what it took to create medication for cancer. That was his original specialty. He was an oncologist, and he was helping develop medications for cancer. And once he understood those principles, he then went to food, and he's like, well, what's in food that might also have these similar principles? And he and I talked about it in relationship to hormones, but I guarantee you in his book that he probably has things like ginger in there and turmeric. We cannot do away with food as medicine. It is absolutely when it's done right. Okay, my baby's coming to you. Eat like a girl. You want to know the foods that will support hormones? Guess what? I have them for you already. It's a free giveaway. Just click the link above and I'll send you a list of all the foods that support amazing hormonal health. Okay, last part of ginger that I just want to point out is that one of the studies that I'm going to put in there is that ginger increased the thermic effect of food, meaning that when you eat ginger with like let's say you put it in a stir fry or you put it in a salad or you put it on top of a meat, it increases your metabolism. Your body actually will raise the metabolism to be able to burn it out. So you're burning more calories. So, I mean, ginger is kind of a superfood, but it really comes at the human body from multiple angles. Now, the last food that I want to talk about is garlic. And we did a whole thing on garlic with Chef Leslie's cooking show and talked about the properties of garlic. So you can go, I did a cooking show with her and I'm sure we'll put a link in here for you to see that. But garlic is anti-inflammatory for the liver. Okay, so when you think garlic, I want you to think liver. Now, what's interesting about that is what I'm teaching you all here is this metabolic switch. And with Fast Like a Girl, I started teaching you about the fasting window. And now I'm really diving into the eating window. And when we are switching back and forth from eating and fasting and eating, when you're over here in the fasting window making ketones, it is the liver that is doing the most work. When you're over here in the eating window, it is the gut that is doing most of the work. So we've got ginger to bring the inflammation down in the gut, and we've got garlic to bring the inflammation down in the liver. So if you've been eating a Western diet, standard Western diet that's been packed with ultra-processed foods, if you want to start to heal those organs, bring that ginger in for the gut and garlic in for the liver. And what's interesting on some of the research that I saw is that eating garlic, this is a fun one, it's a meta-analysis, so they looked at a lot of different ones, and eating garlic reduced not only the inflammation in the liver, but they started to see the liver enzymes change on blood work. Now, those of you that have blood work and you've seen AST and ALT high, that is your liver making these liver enzymes, too much of it. The liver is under stress. Or if it's too low, it's possible that the liver's been working so hard, it doesn't have the capacity to make these liver enzymes. So according to this, when we bring garlic back in, we start to see that it stabilizes liver enzyme production. Whether you're too low or too high, it helps to stabilize all of those. And it's great for reversing signs of fatty liver disease, which I've done several videos on that here for you all. Again, I'm sure my team will put some links in here. But, again, let's go back to food. In Chef Leslie in the cooking show said she just eats a clove a day and just pops it in her mouth and eats one every day. I think that's a really great idea. Like, let's not complicate this. Let's just take one of the cloves here and put it in your mouth and get that daily dose to be able to start to heal the liver. So I hope that helps. Again, I'm here trying to help you all understand this fasting lifestyle and the metabolic switch, but we're currently in a time where food has become poison. I don't know if you've heard of the term food deserts, that there's like parts here in America of big patches of parts of our country where they're not getting good food. They're not getting access to healthy food. Food's there, but it's just the quality of food has gone down so much. So we have to educate ourselves. So in Eat Like a Girl, I got lists of foods you're going to want to avoid. But then we have to look at what nature provided and how and it's just spectacular. When you think about what nature provided, it's like it provided all these amazing foods that have all these incredible properties. Why don't we give it enough credit? Like, why don't we instead we look at food as through the lens of our taste buds, why don't we give it credit? So on this video, I really wanted to bring those spices back to help you all lower your inflammation. And if you attach those three things to a fasting window, when you are fasting, you're lowering inflammation. Chronic inflammation is not hard to overcome. You just have to understand why the body is making the inflammation, what you can do to start to reverse it quickly. So on this video, I really want to dive into herbs. You're going to see a trend here on my videos where I'm really looking at the healing support that food, herbs, spices can actually give us. Because if we really lean into this idea that food is medicine, including herbs, then it makes our fasting state so much easier. One of the things that I'm teaching you all here is how to use this metabolic switch, where you use food to heal and then you go without food so that your body can heal. They're both healing states. But if we are chronically leaning into packaged food, man-made food, bad oils, toxic ingredients, then the sugar burner system is not healing. So let's clean this up. Okay? And there are 3 herbs that I really like that can help heal the body and support specifically a really good nervous system. Remember, I talk a lot about the rushing woman syndrome and how we're just like on a go pace all the time. Well, these 3 herbs can really help calm the nervous system and help that rushing woman body and rushing man body. So let's dive into these 3. First is ashwagandha. So I think we all have heard of ashwagandha a lot. It's in, like, I know if I go to my local natural food stores, it's in all kinds of drink. It's in a lot of different supplements. I think we all, hopefully you have heard of it as, hey, that's really good for stress. And it is. The ashwagandha is incredible for helping heal your body from stress. And here's why. So it is rich in something that is called withanolides. Now, they are a natural sedative. So when you take ashwagandha, it's like calming you down. Okay, let's just take that concept for a moment and let's put it through the eyes of the menopausal woman, because I'm here to really help and support women through that process of perimenopause and menopause. It's massively important to my heart. One of the things that we know is that as progesterone comes down, our ability to relax from stress becomes more difficult. So it's in those moments that we need herbs like ashwagandha that acts like a natural sedative, because progesterone was doing that, but progesterone is now making her exit. So as she makes her exit, we can bring ashwagandha in to help relax us. We also know if we've been living a rushing woman lifestyle where we are on go, that our hypothalamus, pituitary adrenal axis, it's called the HPA axis, may be overused and fried out. So adrenals don't fry out. The whole axis fries out. And what research is showing is this withanolides, this component that ashwagandha has in it, that it can actually normalize and bring back the balance of your HPA axis. So what that does for you is that when you see a stressor or you think about a stressor, your body is able to have a normal cortisol response, as opposed to somebody who is overly stressed and is constantly secreting cortisol. When you take ashwagandha on a regular basis and it brings back balance of the HPA axis, you have appropriate cortisol response, where you get a little bit of cortisol and then your body relaxes. That's why we want to use something like ashwagandha to bring back this HPA axis. The other thing that we know based off of research is that not only is it a sedative, that like I told you, not only does it balance the HPA axis, but it can reduce anxiety, which is really important overall for perimenopause and menopausal women. And so the interesting thing, though, about ashwagandha, before I go to the next one, is that just make sure you get it in a capsule, because it does have a really strong smell. Ashwagandha in Sanskrit actually translates into horse smell. So it may not be good in a tea. It may be better in a capsule if you don't like the smell of horses. Second herb that I am a huge fan of and drink on many occasions is kava. So kava is incredibly good for sleep, and it has a component in it called a kavalactone. And kavalactones go into GABA receptor sites and stimulate the production of GABA. You know what else went into a GABA receptor site? Progesterone. So when you're after 35 for women, as progesterone goes down, nothing's going into that GABA receptor site, but kava can. And there is a lot of different ways that you can reach for kava. There are tinctures, there are teas, there are powders. It's pretty prevalent once you start to really open your eyes to it. Now, there have been numerous studies that have found that kava is incredible for improving sleep. There was one that I really want to highlight, which is a 2004 study of 61 people that they found that not only were they able to fall asleep quicker. Okay, my menopausal women, how many of us go to sleep and we're like, oh, I can't sleep, I can't sleep, I can't sleep. How many of us find that it takes forever to go to sleep? Kava can help with that. So not only is it going to help you go to sleep, but this study found that it decreased sleep disturbances, so you're not waking up, and it gave you an overall improvement in sleep quality, specifically REM and deep sleep. So a cup of kava tea before you go to bed can really help the whole sleep process. One of the tools that I use for kava is something that was I learned from Kauai Pharmacy, and I will put a link to them here in the notes. And they have a kava oil, and I will often put it on the bottom of my feet, the soles of my feet, and then put some socks on before I go to bed and let that just seep into my system. And it's a beautiful way to help me, especially when I was in my perimenopausal years, fall asleep a little quicker. Now, you might notice a couple of things about kava if you choose to go down the kava path. For starters, it can make your mouth numb if you drink it. So don't be freaked out if that happens. The second thing is that if you are going to buy it in the root form, that make sure you steam it in hot water for at least 15 minutes because it takes time for it to get completely integrated into your tea. So if you're going to take like a powder or a root, make sure that you give it enough time. It tends to take a little more steeping time than some of the other herbs and roots that come from the ground. Third thing, love this one. Rhodiola for energy. So we had ashwagandha for stress, we had kava for sleep, and rhodiola for energy. Three really cool herbs the earth has provided us. And here's what's really cool about rhodiola. I geeked out on this one. I went deep down a path. I'm a fan of good energy, if you haven't noticed. I will do everything I can to keep my energy up, and rhodiola is one of those things. So it's a flowering herb that is native to Europe and North America. And it was originally used by the Vikings to increase endurance and physical strength. And it does this because it's rich in some really interesting compounds, 4 specific compounds. It's rich in 4 really unique compounds that not only help with endurance, but they reduce fatigue. And it's not only physical fatigue, but also mental fatigue. So when I'm talking about the endurance capabilities of rhodiola, I'm not just talking about the body, I'm talking about mental fatigue, which back with my menopausal women, was estradiol goes down, our ability to perform mentally can be hindered. And so when we go into rhodiola, we can actually improve our mental focus and endurance and be able to do that full work day that so many of us are trying to keep up with despite having low levels of estrogen. So a really interesting study in 2008 found that rhodiola taken daily will increase mental energy, will reduce burnout, and can increase a person's ability to mentally take on demanding tasks. So again, sounds like a perfect tool for my menopausal friends. And if you are in an extended fast, rhodiola is a great herb to use throughout a fast, especially if you're noticing that you're getting some brain fog as your body adapts to this fat burner system. So there's 3 herbs, and really what I want to point out to you is that the earth has given us some tremendous plants that we can use to keep that sugar burner system working right, that we can use to heal, and works in a synergistic way with the innate healing of our own body. So I love fasting for healing because in the absence of many of these herbs and foods, the body will heal itself. But again, we also want to keep in mind that food and plants and herbs in general can support a proper healing effect. And sometimes those fit into the sugar burner system. Sometimes you can take them as supplements in the fat burning system, but we can't leave herbs out of the equation, especially ones that are going to help with stress, sleep, and energy. And I don't know a menopausal woman on the planet that doesn't need help with that. So in the next video, it's called Do This Before You Sleep. sleep to avoid belly fat. And there's habits you want to do the night before, and there's habits you want to do in the morning, and all of those make a big difference. Make sure your room is cool. If our mattress is cool, if the room is cool, it activates the parasympathetic nervous system. This is a little bit like cold plunges.